Hello and welcome to NTD News Today. Kevin Hogan here. Let's take a look at our top stories. President Biden preparing for the 2022 midterm elections. What's his strategy to help Democrats win votes? We take a look at how it's shaping up so far from a recent speech. Biden is leading a push for Democrat voting legislation today in Georgia. What do Senate leaders on both sides have to say? And in the Bronx, authorities begin investigating how thick smoke could billow through a high-rise, trapping many families inside and killing 17 people, including 8 children. With the midterms approaching, what's President Biden's strategy to help Democrats win votes? NTD's Jessica Beatty takes a look at what we can gather from one of his recent speeches.
With the 2022 midterms approaching, President Biden's speech last week could give us a clue to his strategy to help win Democrat votes. Last Thursday, on the one-year anniversary of the U.S. Capitol breach, Biden criticized former President Trump and his supporters.
The big lie being told by the former president and many Republicans who fear his wrath is that the insurrection in this country actually took place on Election Day. Can you think of a more twisted way to look at this country, to look at America? I cannot.
Trump responded saying, quote, Biden's working hard to try and deflect the incompetent job he's doing. Despite Biden's jab at Trump and his supporters, Biden did seem to reach out to swing voters, saying he's willing to work with other Republicans.
But whatever my other disagreements are with Republicans who support the rule of law and not the rule of a single man, I will always seek to work together with them.
Throughout Biden's first year in office, he's faced criticism for rising inflation, the energy crisis, and how he handled withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. A Rasmussen poll for the week ending December 30th showed that only 30% of likely U.S. voters think the country's heading in the right direction. According to Epoch Times congressional reporter Joseph Lord, Biden may be a liability in 2022, and several Democrats are distancing themselves from him. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy warned Democrats in November if Biden won their seat by 16 points, they're in for a competitive race in 2022. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
President Biden is renewing his push for new voting measures. A Senate vote could come this week, and Biden is making it a key part of his trip to Atlanta today, where he's set to deliver a major speech on the issue. Here are the details.
President Biden is heading to Atlanta, Georgia Tuesday for a speech pushing for voting legislation. The White House says there's an urgent need to safeguard free and fair elections in the U.S.
The only way to do that are for the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act.
Democrat leaders argue they're necessary to counteract new laws in many Republican-led states that Democrats say are aimed at making it harder to vote. But Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell says that isn't true.
If you actually read the legislation that's been passed, it's clearly not the case.
Right now, Democrats need 60 votes to move their measures forward, which they don't have. So Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer is considering changing filibuster rules so they could pass the bills with a simple majority.
The time has come to act to defend democracy and protect voting rights, even if it means changing Senate rules.
Biden is prepared to back that move, but McConnell says it's a power grab.
They want to silence millions of Americans and take over the Senate so they can take over elections, so they can take over America.
Senate Democrats would need the support of every member of their caucus to change the filibuster rules. But 2 senators are likely to remain opposed, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona and Joe Manchin of West Virginia.
Do you vote in your local elections? Voter turnout in New York City has been going down for decades and is often only around 20 to 30%. But this might change. The city is now allowing non-citizens to vote. NTD's Arian Pastar has the details.
Over 800,000 non-citizens can now vote in local New York City elections. That includes people with green cards and work permits. And they'll be allowed to vote after living in the city for 30 days. Mayor Adams says he didn't like the idea that new voters have to be in the city for only 30 days before being allowed to vote, but he ended up letting the bill go through. He explained his decision in a statement, saying, "While I initially had some concerns about one aspect of the bill, I had a productive dialogue with my colleagues in government that put those concerns at ease." Charles Bullock is a professor of political science. He explained the pros and cons of non-citizen voting.
You have individuals who are living within the community who are sending kids to the schools, who are paying taxes probably, and therefore they should arguably have some say-so over the government which they're probably most likely to be dealing with.
And the downside of it?
If these individuals who are not citizens are allowed to vote in these local elections, they might then begin to have expectations and to make demands that they be able to vote, say, in state legislative elections, because the actions of the state legislature are also going to have some impact over their lives.
Do you think that with New York starting something like this, that in the future non-citizens might even be allowed to vote in presidential elections?
I doubt it. No, I think that there'd be a real distinction between voting in local elections, which arguably a local government like a city or a county could control. With regard to the federal elections, no, that would not be, I don't think that would be feasible.
Rebecca Grace is a national board member of Lexit, the Latino movement to exit the Democratic Party. She disagrees with the new law.
It's a disrespect to the people that actually do it the right way. Like a lot of people in the United States, like my mom, she's Italian and Dominican, and she had to do it the right way.
The first local New York City election in which non-citizens can cast their votes will be next year in 2023. Arian Pastar, NTD News, New York.
And the Republican National Committee is suing New York City Mayor Eric Adams over the new voting law. They argue that American elections should be decided by American citizens. Congressman Ed Perlmutter of Colorado has added his name to the expansive list of Democrats looking to retire before the 2022 midterm elections. He becomes the 26th Democrat to do so. Most of these retirements have come from the House of Representatives. Republicans are expected to present a fierce challenge to Democrats who want to hold on to their House majority in the November elections. In the Senate, Democrats have a more favorable election map, and only one Democrat has retired there. Some are speculating there is a connection between the difficulty Democrats will face in this year's elections and the growing list of retirements. During his speech announcing his retirement, Perlmutter said despite the challenges, he expects Democrats to win. Perlmutter himself would have likely faced a sizable challenge if he ran again. The National Republican Congressional Committee considers his seat highly vulnerable. The U.S. has broken its record for the most people hospitalized with COVID-19 as the surge caused by the Omicron variant strains healthcare systems. This, while President Biden's vaccine mandate takes effect even as the Supreme Court battle over it wages on. The vaccine mandate for private employers set forth by the Biden administration took effect Monday, though legal challenges to it are taking place in the Supreme Court. This has left many employers unsure how to proceed. The mandate affects employers with 100 or more workers, and it impacts about 84 million U.S. workers. OSHA will not impose fines for noncompliance until February 9th. On Monday, the U.S. reached an all-time high of hospitalizations due to COVID-19. That's according to a Reuters tally. The outlet said hospitalizations have surpassed January 2021's record. There is a difference, though. According to emergency physician chief Dr. Rahul Sharma in New York Presbyterian Weill Cornell Medical Center, the symptoms are different. In past surges, COVID patients in hospitals usually exhibited symptoms like low oxygen levels, pneumonia, or difficulty breathing, but Sharma says only about half of the COVID patients in hospitals have those symptoms now.
The remaining 50% of these COVID hospitalizations are patients admitted for other causes. For example, heart attacks, strokes, abdominal pain, cancer, other infections, but who happen to incidentally test positive for COVID, since everyone that's admitted to the hospital is tested for COVID.
The Biden administration says insurers are to cover 8 at-home COVID-19 tests per person per month. Insurance companies and group health plans are required to cover the cost of over-the-counter tests. That's for people with private health coverage. It starts January 15th. The Department of Health and Human Services says insurance companies will either provide the money up front or allow a reimbursement for the cost. The CEO of Chase Bank, Jamie Dimon, gave an update about his employees who are unvaccinated. On Monday, he said Chase employees in New York will risk losing their jobs and won't be paid if they don't comply with the company's vaccine requirements. Dimon told Reuters that they're not going to pay workers not to work in the office. Diamond said they don't have the answer as to whether or not the company has considered allowing employees to work from both home and the office. COVID-19 cases have surged almost threefold in the military since just before Christmas. The Defense Department reported just under 5,300 cases among service members December 22nd. By January 5th, that number reached almost 14,000. Officials say those numbers reflect what is happening in much of the country as the Omicron variant takes hold. In response, the military is increasing health restrictions on many bases and at the Pentagon. As of September 1st, there were 40 military member deaths due to COVID-19. By January 5th, the total was 86. Blood donations are urgently needed now. According to the American Red Cross and two other organizations, the U.S. blood supply is at a dangerously low level. Surging COVID-19 cases, severe weather, declines in donor turnout, canceled blood drives, and staffing issues are all contributing to the shortage. Plus, donated blood has a short shelf life, and supplies must be constantly replenished. Centers across the country are reporting less than 1 day's supply of certain types of blood. The type O positive is given to patients more than any other type, so if you have O positive blood, your donation is most needed. Luckily, it's also the most common blood type. You can schedule an appointment to donate at redcrossblood.org. New York City Mayor Eric Adams has vowed to keep the nation's largest school system open amid the latest wave of more contagious but less virulent CCP virus cases. NTD's Andrew Thomas has more from a parent and an education specialist.
Biljana Starshevic Parrish is the mother of 5-year-old Frankie. She says she wants her daughter's school to stay open.
I'm not worried about it all. I want them to be open. I want my kid to go to school. In fact, I think schools, now that vaccines are widely available, the officials should start thinking about making school normal again.
Julia Rafal-Bear is a former assistant commissioner with the New York State Department of Education. She also co-founded the education consulting company ILO Group and says it's a priority to keep schools open.
There is no reason right now for us to be shutting down entire districts or entire states with everything that we know about what it takes to keep kids safely in classrooms right now.
Few wish to see a return to online-only learning that marked some of the early waves of the virus.
The other point I would just emphasize on this is that for many kids, virtual is not an option. They have families that can't be there with them to help them to be online, and certainly not in this rolling basis of being online and back in school.
While potentially less severe, health officials have warned that the number of infections caused by the Omicron variant could strain the hospital systems, some of which have already suspended elective procedures, as they struggle to handle the surge of patients amid staff shortages.
We know that our schools have been some of the safest environments and certainly have not been drivers of COVID spread. And we know so much more today than we did, say, 2 years ago and even a year ago about what it takes operationally to maintain operations within these schools to keep things reopened.
Omicron accounts for about 95% of CCP virus cases, according to the CDC. On January 5th, 705,000 new cases were reported. That's more than double the January 2021 peak. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Doctors worked diligently Monday to save survivors of New York City's deadliest fire in 3 decades. Authorities began investigating how thick smoke could billow through a high-rise, trapping many families inside and killing 17 people, including 8 children.
Investigators determined that a malfunctioning electric space heater started the fire in the 19-story building.
This time of year, when the temperatures drop, people find different ways to heat their apartments. Some people use the stove and hot water. Some people buy space heaters. Other people use other dangerous heating elements to keep warm in these falling temperatures.
The flames damaged only a small part of the building, but smoke poured through the apartment's open door and flooded into the stairwells. Firefighters continued making rescues even after their air supplies ran out. Lieutenant James McCarthy praised the firefighters who responded to the scene.
Firefighters responded and acted above and beyond the call of duty, certainly putting themselves out. If you've seen the videos of our members performing CPR on the victims as they're being carried out on stretchers or on the ground, or even some members on portable ladders or aerial ladders.
Some people could not escape because of the smoke. Others became incapacitated as they tried to get out. Firefighters found victims on every floor, many in cardiac and respiratory arrest.
There was a significant amount of fire showing through the exterior windows, and then that caused a lot of smoke in the building. And again, that's why so many people were overcome, not necessarily by the flames, but by the smoke itself, which is poisonous.
An investigation is underway to determine how the fire spread and whether anything could have been done to prevent or contain the blaze. Large, new apartment buildings are required to have sprinkler systems and interior doors that swing shut automatically to contain smoke. But those rules don't apply to thousands of the city's older buildings. The fire was New York City's deadliest since 1990. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
California is taking what appears to be a giant leap towards socialized medicine. The state's governor announced a plan yesterday to expand health care to all Californians, including those who live in the state illegally. Here's more.
At a recent budget briefing, Governor Gavin Newsom unveiled the state's new health care plan. It will cover all low-income residents, regardless of their age and immigration status.
California is poised to be, if this proposal is supported, the first state in the country to achieve universal access to health coverage. So
the state's taxpayers are already footing the healthcare bill for some groups of illegal immigrants, including young adults and those 50 and over. But the new initiative, set to run in January 2024, would drive annual spending up to $2.2 billion. Newsom's budget proposal totals around $286 billion. The governor said it's designed to address 5 of the state's biggest problems.
So here's the 5 things we're focused on. These are referred to often by some as existential, particularly as it relates to climate change, issues related to COVID, but homelessness, cost of living broadly defined, and public safety increasingly and understandably top of mind in terms of people's concerns. So these are the top 5 areas.
Other spendings include a total of $2.7 billion for forest management and fire prevention, a homeless package priced at $14 billion, and doubling down on existing budget to provide free universal preschool. The governor also touted steps to ease rising costs in the state. He pledged cutting taxes for businesses and halting a gas tax spike scheduled in July. Newsom's hefty proposal is backed by the state's soaring revenues during the pandemic. Data shows California's 3 major taxes income were nearly 40% higher than 2020 and 60% higher than 2019 before the pandemic hit.
Tax season is nearly upon us. The Internal Revenue Service says it will start accepting 2021 federal tax returns on Monday, January 24th. Filers have until April 18th to complete their return. That's 3 days later than normal because Washington, D.C. is observing Emancipation Day on April 15th. The deadline is further extended for tornado and storm victims in Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee, as well as wildfire victims in Colorado. Treasury officials are already warning of processing delays. The IRS has millions of backlog returns because of the pandemic and limited funding. But if you're owed a refund, the typical turnaround is still 21 days if you opt for direct deposit. Longtime CNN producer fired over child trafficking allegations now faces a second lawsuit. The suit is for $15 million. It alleges despicable acts of horrific sexual abuse with a 9-year-old girl. The suit says CNN producer John Griffin solicited young girls to engage in sexual activity. Griffin was the producer for CNN's New Day. Griffin allegedly pressured parents to bring their daughters to a home in Vermont for illegal sexual acts. The pressure allegedly worked in one case when he convinced a mother to fly with her daughter from Nevada. The suit alleges Griffin took drone footage of a completely naked 9-year-old girl standing beside him while he was in his underwear. He faces up to life in prison if convicted on a single count. The woman is believed in court documents to be the girl's adopted mother. She is also accused of abusing the girl. Griffin has pleaded not guilty to all charges and is still being held without bail. The Hawaii Department of Health has ordered the Navy to halt operations at its Red Hill fuel shortage facility, the Pearl Harbor Hickam base. This comes after it was revealed the facility had a leak which led to contaminated drinking water. 700 people were forced from their homes and many became sick. One Army major says her family ended up in the hospital after drinking the water.
It happened very quickly. First, it was my 1-year-old son and my husband, and 2 days later ended up being my daughter, she's 4, and myself. And it was pretty severe abdominal pain. I've told people that the only thing I can compare it to is labor pains, like contractions in my belly. Our story represents hundreds of military families who are going through the same thing, unfortunately.
The Navy shut down the contaminated well on November 28th after residents reported symptoms. The Health Department is calling on the Navy to install a drinking water treatment system, submit a work plan to assess system integrity, and to defuel the Red Hill underground storage tanks. The National Park Service is investigating vandalism at Big Bend National Park in Texas. The agency says someone scratched their names and a date into a panel of prehistoric stone artwork. The names Norma, Adrian, Isaac, and Ariel, and the date 12/26/21 are visible on the petroglyph, thought to be between 4,000 and 8,500 years old. The National Park Service believes the incident happened December 26th. The rock has since been treated, but the scratches and discoloration are permanent. Since 2015, the National Park Service has documented more than 50 instances of vandalism at Big Bend. 20 years ago, the first detainees arrived at the Guantanamo U.S. military prison in Cuba. The United States set up the prison after U.S.-led forces entered Afghanistan after the September 11th terrorist attacks. The U.S. entered Afghanistan in pursuit of the al-Qaeda network behind the 9/11 attacks that killed nearly 3,000 people in 2001. The Guantanamo prison kept hundreds of foreign terrorism suspects locked up in the aftermath of the attacks and the war against the Taliban that followed. Its population grew at one time to a peak of almost 800 inmates. Some detainees have said they were tortured there. The U.S. government has acknowledged that interrogators used now-banned techniques. The White House says President Biden aims to close Guantanamo by the time he leaves office. The United States and Canada have entered their 12th round of negotiations on the Columbia River Treaty. This is an agreement that covers flood control, hydroelectric power, and water resource management in the cross-border Columbia River Basin. The Columbia River Treaty was first signed in 1964 and is set to expire in 2024. Negotiations over a new agreement started under President Trump. The key to the negotiations are water flows from U.S. dam and 3 Canadian dams. Under the terms of the original treaty, Canada provided storage for Columbia River flow. In exchange, the United States paid Canada millions for flood control and half the downstream hydropower energy produced from water released at the Canadian dams. Negotiations on both sides are being informed by local Native American tribes and First Nations groups. The original treaty was spurred by a devastating 1948 flood. It wiped the Portland, Oregon area community of the Vanport off the map. Just ahead, a personal finance coach offers money tips that help you balance your budget in the new year and beyond. More on that in just a minute here on NTD News.
Secure, the true solution for your digital privacy and security. Secure is a private and secure messaging and email solution hosted in Switzerland, using military-grade encryption and Swiss privacy laws, giving you true privacy. Secure is 100% private and does not collect or sell any of your personal data. Secure's Helix technology connects you securely to our Swiss servers without the need of a VPN, guaranteeing privacy and security for all your communications. Secure Messenger doesn't require your phone number or any personal data that hackers target. Chat by Invites allows you to chat privately and securely with anyone outside of your secure network without the need for others to download Secure. Secure Send offers you a private and secure way to email anyone outside of Secure. You won't find this level of privacy or security on any other email or instant messaging application. Visit secure.com. Regain and protect your privacy today.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, the CEO of MyPillow. Cancel culture has not only affected myself and MyPillow, but millions of you out there. My employees and I want to personally thank each and every one of you for all of your support. At MyPillow, we not only have pillows, but we have hundreds of products, including my new slippers, bathrobes, sleepwear, and my new beds. We're offering the best gifts ever for the best prices ever. For example, we have this exclusive offer on the standard size MyPillows, regularly $69.98, now only $19.98 with your promo code. We also have the queen size MyPillows, regularly $79.98, now only $24.98 with your promo code. And we have the king size, regularly $89.98, now only $29.98 with your promo code. So go to mypillow.com now and use the promo code on your screen or call the 1-800 number below to receive this exclusive offer.
The U.S. Mint has started rolling out new quarters featuring late American author Maya Angelou. The prolific writer was known for her lyrical prose and regal speaking voice. Now she's the first black woman to appear on the coin. Angelou rose to international prominence after the publication of her groundbreaking autobiography titled I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. It describes her experience growing up in the segregated South. Angelou died in 2014 at age 86. The coin is part of the American Women Quarters program. It also includes the first Chinese-American Hollywood film star, Anna May Wong. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said in a statement that each time the U.S. redesigns its currency, it has a chance to say something about what the country values and how it has progressed. If your New Year's resolution is to get your finances in top shape, one financial expert shares 5 money moves you should make right now to set yourself up for success.
New year, new you. While many made New Year's resolutions to improve their health and wellness, financial experts say getting your finances in top shape should also be a priority this 2022.
It's so important to focus on financial well-being, especially at the beginning of the year, because really you want to set yourself up for success.
Personal finance coach Julie Alma Taveras recommends these 5 money moves. First, she says look back at last year and make a budget for this year. Decide how much you'll spend and save and figure out what needs to get cut.
You want to pull out the things that you know maybe were just one-time things, and also maybe some things that were recurring, like maybe ordering out too much or shopping a little bit too much that you could definitely cut back on.
The second move is to start investing. Figure out what you'll set aside for your retirement and how much you can invest in other assets like real estate. The third move, jumpstart your career. Tavera says this may be the perfect time to seek new opportunities like a new job that pays better.
A lot of times when you move to a different company, you can oftentimes get up to 30% raise. And this past year, I've seen people get even 50% raise, which seems kind of crazy, but it is possible. And it's kind of the environment that we're in right now.
Next, check your credit report. Look for potential errors and get them removed. Taveras also recommends requesting an interest rate decrease on your credit cards. And finally, eliminate debt. Create a debt payment plan so it doesn't feel so overwhelming.
Let's talk about luxury cars. Aston Martin is planning its official debut in New York City, announcing its first ever showroom in Manhattan. It'll be located on Park Avenue and 57th Street, right off of New York City's Billionaires Row, promoting its new brand immersive experience with cars starting at $200,000 for a Vantage Roadster to over $3 million for its Valkyrie hybrid line. NASA's Mars rover got into a rocky situation while roaming the Red Planet. NASA says its Perseverance rover struggled to stow away its latest sample of the landscape. Apparently, rocks kept getting in the way. Pebble-sized debris obstructed the rover's robotic arm. What sounds like a simple problem actually took NASA several days to fix, partly because they're communicating with a robotic rover that's more than 200 million miles away. Scientists think the debris was from the sample of cored rock collected by the rover. Soon we look at a new military technology that China is working on. Did you ever think that a nation would try to weaponize the human brain to command the battlefield? Well, that may be on the horizon. When we come back, we'll look at some of the risks of this tech falling into the wrong hands. Military leaders of Japan and South Korea say North Korea today launched an unidentified projectile off its east coast. This is the second report of a missile launch in under a week.
North Korea fired what was believed to be a ballistic missile on Tuesday, the second within a span of days. It comes after leader Kim Jong-un threatened more military advances in a New Year's speech. The latest launch has already drawn fire from neighbors.
Under these circumstances, it's very regrettable that North Korea continues to launch missiles.
And South Korea's National Security Council expressed strong regret at an emergency meeting, saying the repeated offense risked destabilizing the region. Officials added it's cooperating with U.S. allies to closely monitor the situation. The launch underscored Kim Jong-un's New Year promise to bolster the military as peace talks with South Korea and the U.S. have stalled. North Korea has said it is open to talk, but only if the U.S. and others drop hostile policies such as sanctions and military drills. UN Security Council resolutions ban North Korea from all ballistic missile and nuclear tests and have imposed sanctions over the programs.
With just weeks before Beijing kicks off the Winter Olympics, the Omicron variant has appeared in a nearby city. To quickly stamp it out, authorities there have ordered mass virus testing for over 14 million residents to be completed in just 2 days. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
Beijing is on high alert over a neighboring city's first Omicron cluster outbreak. China's northern coastal city of Tianjin began testing its 14 million residents on Sunday. That's after authorities detected 2 local cases of the Omicron variant. The city is about 30 minutes from Beijing by express train, and many commuters work and live in the 2 cities. This outbreak threatens to disrupt the upcoming Winter Olympics, which will be staged in Beijing next month. According to Chinese official media outlet Xinhua, commuters traveling from Beijing to Tianjin have been asked to stay away. The city authorities said on Monday they are aiming to complete mass testing in Tianjin within 2 days. They say it's to, quote, resolutely prevent the virus spreading, especially to Beijing. The city is under partial lockdown. Buses and trains from Tianjin to Beijing have been suspended, and the city closed some subways and canceled some domestic flights. Despite local authorities' promises of adequate supplies, the outbreak prompted a flurry of panic buying. Many supermarkets and grocery store shelves are now empty. The authorities have not announced the end of the lockdown, but looking at the Chinese Communist Party's previous actions, it's likely the lockdown will last until the end of February, when the Beijing Winter Olympics is over. City officials reported another 20 positive cases on Sunday. That brings the total in Tianjin to 40. But the Chinese Communist Party's history of concealing and underreporting virus cases means we cannot independently verify those numbers. The source of this outbreak in Tianjin is still unclear, as the first 2 detected cases reportedly had not traveled outside the city recently, and they had no contact with others who tested positive. But the virus may have been spreading in Tianjin for some time. Authorities pointed to virus cases in another city 300 miles away, saying a university student in Anyang City of Henan Province was also infected with the same type of Omicron variant. The student returned from Tianjin to Anyang at the end of December, and this is believed to be how the highly contagious variant spread. This would mean that at least 2 weeks ago, the student had caught the virus in Tianjin. In a city just outside Beijing, this weekend marked a new round of mandatory virus testing for all residents. That's after the city named Tianjin detected its first cluster of the Omicron variant. A ways away in Xi'an City, residents are also getting retested, even though city officials announced the area had basically achieved its zero COVID goal just days before, meaning the virus is allegedly no longer spreading there. But evidence suggesting the opposite has cropped up since then. This video was captured Sunday morning. That's when some communities in Xi'an suddenly received notice of an emergency round of virus testing. The clip shows a gathering of what looks to be thousands of people. A local resident told NTD that anyone who refuses to get tested will be taken away by police. To protect her identity, we used her last name only.
Basically, it's done every day. When they call us with the loudspeakers, we have to go down and take the test. If you refuse, the police will immediately arrest you.
On Saturday, about 200 neighborhoods in the city were upgraded to a complete lockdown. Under those orders, household doors are sealed shut from the outside, and no one is allowed to leave their homes.
Where there are cases, all infected people will be taken away, isolated, and quarantined. Basically, 0 cases means they will be taken outside of the neighborhood.
According to official figures, 45,000 people from Xi'an have been removed from their homes and put in isolation, either inside makeshift hospitals or quarantine centers. Video reveals that even some underground parking garages have been repurposed as quarantine centers, and authorities are still adding beds. As part of the lockdown, Chinese authorities are censoring what they've labeled as negative information, meaning photos, videos, or information about poor conditions or extreme tactics used are quickly removed when posted online. But a handful of them manage to circulate before getting deleted. One clip captures someone on the ground next to a high-rise residential building in Xi'an. Residents can be heard shouting, "Someone jumped off the building." But little can be seen on site, since residents are to stay inside, blocked from getting too close. This is the second similar report from Xi'an to emerge on social media in recent days. No Chinese media outlets have reported on the incidents. NTD cannot verify the motive behind them or if they're related to the pandemic or local lockdowns. The video has since been removed.
Imagine a military with the capability of launching a strike with just a person's thought. It sounds like science fiction, but it's becoming a reality. That's because Beijing is spending billions of dollars every year on neuroscience that could lead to the weaponization of the human brain. I wanted to learn more about this technology, so I spoke with Brandon Weichert. He is an author and geopolitical analyst. He describes this technology and outlines some of the risks of it being used by an oppressive regime.
Brain control interfaces are a new technology that basically allows for the integration of man and machine in a seamless, effective way, much better than the way we do it with sort of the tactile, iPhone hitting a button or, controlling a drone from far away with the way we do it now. In this case, the brain will actually have a direct linkage into the machine. And obviously that has some great benefits for people who are ill who are paraplegic, that could help them, be able to walk possibly at some point using this technology. But obviously there's a military application as well. And that military application is what China's really focused on. Already in India, we see China deploying 80 new robots that are designed to augment the Chinese forces currently challenging India for control of the Tibetan Plateau. This is a proof of concept, and ultimately what the goal is to be able to develop those brain control interfaces to such a degree that China can then start having soldiers with brain control devices controlling swarms of drones, swarms of land warriors. And it sounds science fiction, but this is where we are.
The Chinese regime is totalitarian, genocidal, according to the U.S. State Department,
Absolutely.
and territorially aggressive, which you alluded to. Just ask some of its neighbors, like India or Taiwan. What are the risks of the CCP developing brain control weaponry?
Well, basically, on the military side, as I said, you have that sort of seamless integration of man and machine, which augments their warfighting capability, makes them quicker, makes them stronger. You can imagine sort of like eventually an Iron Man type suit where the Chinese soldier is integrated into that suit. So just imagine the capabilities that might give. And this is something the Chinese are talking about doing. Obviously, it's in the infancy right now. But on the civilian side, we've already seen China, and I hate to use the Nazi term, but in this case it applies. China, like the Nazis of old, is experimenting on political prisoners. They're doing biological experimentation. They're taking DNA of the Uyghurs in concentration camps to create specific genetic weapons. Inevitably, we could see or foresee this brain control interface being applied to people who are political prisoners, having it inserted into the base of their skull, allowing for 24/7 instantaneous monitoring and possibly control of a political prisoner by the CCP minders. This is a very revolutionary technology. If in the wrong hands, it could destroy the one thing that separates humanity from the animals, and that's our free will.
The U.S. has already blacklisted China's top medical research institute, run by the Chinese military, back in December. The U.S. has accused them of developing brain control weaponry, and the Commerce Department also says it might ban the export of such technologies. So this is a developing story. Still to come, residents on an Italian island are being forced into exile. Without proof of vaccination, they won't be allowed to visit the mainland anymore. Some say their freedom is at stake. And a new business model is helping some farmers in Australia realize their dreams. They now can compete with foreign investors and buy back their own family land. Find out more after the short break.
We are being censored. America's news outlets no longer provide the truth. 90% of news outlets in the United States are controlled by 6 corporations. They're not out to tell you the truth of what's happening. They're out to tell you the picture of the world that they represent. The Epoch Times is independent. We're not controlled by any special interest, and we never will be. This is a battle between truth and deceit, a battle between forces that would ensnare this country in ignorance, and between a media that wants to present you with the truth. Subscribe today to our digital edition at theepochtimes.com and join the Americans who are seeking truth and tradition. Read The Difference on all your devices. We'd love to have you on board.
The shining gem of New England. This delightful seaside city of Newport is one of the most beautiful places in the state. Today, we bring you here as we meet with our friends and fellow musicians from the Hermitage Piano Trio. As a team, they have garnered multiple Grammy Award nominations with their breathtaking performances.
Oh, wow, I did not think this instrument can make that sound, right?
The pandemic made this reunion even more special.
3 of us, we like it because we feel music the same way, so...
Don't miss us on the next episode of Piano Talks.
European Parliament President David Sassoli died today in a hospital in Italy where he was admitted on December 26th, his spokesperson said. Sassoli, an Italian socialist and former journalist from Florence, was hospitalized last month due to a serious complication related to his immune system. He had been president of the 705-seat parliament since 2019. His term in the predominantly ceremonial role was due to end this month. Due to illness, he had been unable to chair the Strasbourg-based parliament in recent weeks, and he missed the European Commission's annual State of the Union event in September. Britain's official COVID death toll has now passed 150,000. As quarantine requirements are causing staff shortages, the Prime Minister is under pressure to decide whether to cut isolation to 5 days, and health authorities are concerned that the vaccine mandate for frontline staff will make staff shortages worse. We've got more from NTD's Joy Duguid.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is under pressure from Tory MPs to set out plans to ease COVID-19 restrictions and deliver a vision for living with the virus. When he visited his Uxbridge constituency on Monday, he said ministers will look at the science and then decide whether to cut the quarantine period to 5 days. On Sunday, the Education Secretary told Sky News cutting the isolation period would help reduce staff shortages in key areas.
I would
obviously always defer to the scientific advice on this. It would certainly, help mitigate some of the pressures on, schools, on critical workforce and others.
Ministers are also under pressure over the vaccine mandate coming for frontline health workers. When the Health Secretary visited King's College Hospital in London on Friday, he was challenged by ICU consultant Dr. Steve James over the mandate. The chief executive of the hospital said he was concerned over whether he will have enough staff to provide for patients safely. He also told BBC that about 10% of his 14,000 staff were unvaccinated. From April, NHS staff in England who have face-to-face contact with patients will need to have been vaccinated against COVID. The former chairman of Britain's vaccine task force also said mass vaccination against COVID-19 should come to an end. Clive Dick said mass testing and vaccination should be ended for all but the most vulnerable after the booster campaign is completed. He is calling for an overhaul of the current government strategy in the coming months, and COVID should instead be treated like flu or a heavy cold among younger people who have been fully jabbed. On Saturday, the UK's official COVID death toll passed 150,000. This figure includes those who have died within 28 days of testing positive for COVID-19. The Prime Minister said it was a terrible toll. Joy Duguid, NTD News.
New pandemic restrictions in Italy have stranded residents of Ischia, a volcanic island in the Gulf of Naples. Since yesterday, proof of vaccination or recovery has been required to board ferries to the mainland. Some say they feel their freedom is under threat. Let's take a look.
Borio is one of 6 cities on the Italian island of Ischia. Starting this week, residents there must show their vaccination certificate before boarding a ferry to the mainland city of Naples. Proof is also required for all entry into cafes, hotels, gyms, and other daily activities. Those who haven't gotten the jab soon found themselves at risk of forced exile.
Not everyone has the option to get vaccinated. Everybody must be free to choose. Therefore, if somebody does not want to get vaccinated, the government cannot oblige him or her. For these reasons, I don't think it is fair to enforce the mandatory vaccination certificate.
A small group of residents demonstrated against the policy next to a Naples-bound ferry in the port of Ischia. Protesters said the mandatory pass unfairly isolates the islanders, referring to the policies of Italian Health Minister Roberto Speranza.
Speranza gave us a sop by giving special authorization to board to those traveling for health reasons or to go to school. Okay, good. And what about working reasons?
Forio City's mayor says the vaccine mandate discriminates against unvaccinated residents.
Because the vaccination becomes de facto mandatory for all islanders who cannot leave the island, and not mandatory for mainland citizens who can drive around freely in their private cars.
Del Dio is also the president of the Italian Small Islands Association. He's already written to the authorities, calling for an exemption for islanders to board the ferry by providing a negative test certificate in lieu of vaccination.
This year marks the 10th anniversary of a maritime disaster. On January 13, 2012, a huge luxury cruise ship capsized near an Italian island after conducting maneuvers close to shore. The ship is known as Costa Concordia. It measured around 300 yards long, weighed over 100,000 tons, and featured a floating hotel the length of 3 soccer fields. It struck a rock near the resort island of Giglio, tearing a 38-yard-long gash in the ship's hull before it sank. Some 4,200 passengers and crew members were evacuated. 32 lost their lives. In the court hearings that followed, the ship's captain was found guilty of multiple counts of manslaughter. In 2015, he was sentenced to 16 years in prison. The case marked one of the most high-profile shipping disasters of recent years. While recovering the ship was among the most expensive salvage efforts in history. Local residents will hold a mass and candlelight procession on Thursday in memory of the decade-old tragedy. For many Australian farmers, a rise in foreign ownership has reduced the prospect of owning their own farmland to but a mere dream. But now, a new business model in one region is giving locals a fresh opportunity to buy back family land. Let's take a look.
Lush and fertile, these pastures in the northwest of Tasmania have attracted investors from around the world, but they're largely under the control of corporate and foreign entities. For young Tasmanian farmers, having their own land seems a distant dream.
It takes away the opportunity of the dream of owning your farm, because they get bigger and bigger and bigger. Like, you're talking 1,800 cows, 1,000 cow farms. They come with a big price tag.
Now, one special company is making that dream a reality. Known as Circular Head Farms, it raises funds from local property investors and seeks out family farmers to run them.
Ultimately, they can start with very little and over time build up into cow ownership, and even ultimately, our goal is to see them start to come into ownership of the farm.
In over 7 years, Circular Head Farms has grown into a huge network, with 11 dairy farms, nearly 10,000 acres of farmland, and 8,500 milking cows.
I just want to see us as a community reap the rewards. Wealth's created owning the farm. Wealth's not created working on the farm. If you want to create wealth for your community, then you own it.
The company says it has no objections to foreign ownership, but today most of his customers are locals, as foreign buyers are facing hurdles.
Having to wait for that Foreign Investment Review Board approval has really pushed them out of the marketplace to a large extent. Because the market's strong, properties are selling more quickly than they have done in the past.
Some farmers also point out the difference between the families that came from elsewhere and the large corporate groups from overseas. Gennaro is a cheesemaker, originally from Venezuela.
We may not be born here, but we feel like we're now part of this community. If we buy a block of land or we buy cattle and things like that, all that money will stay here, all that money will be invested here.
For him and many other businesses in town, what's really important is plowing profits back into the community.
It's one of the world's oldest and most natural foods. We're talking, of course, about milk, and what a better day to do so than on National Milk Day. The occasion commemorates the time when, as many believe, the first milk deliveries in glass bottles started in the U.S. The United States and Australia export more milk than any other country. That includes milk products like cheese, yogurt, ice cream, and butter. To celebrate National Milk Day, you could treat yourself to a tall glass of milk or maybe a milkshake. Whatever you choose, remember to use the hashtag National Milk Day if you're sharing on social media. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.